The early autumn light crept over Silverwood, a small town where each sunrise whispered secrets of days gone by. In front of the old brick school, a venerable building that had witnessed generations of laughter, learning, and loss, there stood a lone figure every morning. Not a person, but a stray dog whose ragged coat and soulful eyes seemed to carry the weight of untold stories. Ms. Emily Carter arrived at the school just as the first rays of dawn painted the sky in hues of gold and amber. A devoted teacher with a gentle manner and an inquisitive spirit, she always took a moment to appreciate the simple wonders that greeted her. Yet on this particular morning, as she stepped onto the dew-damp pavement, her gaze was irresistibly drawn to the silent sentinel that occupied the school's threshold. The dog, lean and wary yet inexplicably dignified, sat with a calm that belied its turbulent past. Its dark eyes flickered with an intensity that made Emily pause. Something in that gaze stirred memories and unanswered questions buried deep within her heart. For reasons she could not yet explain, Emily felt compelled to learn more about this mysterious visitor. A daily enigma. Every morning, like clockwork, the stray dog appeared at precisely the same spot. Its presence was an unspoken ritual, a quiet defiance against the encroaching modernity of the town and a reminder that not all truths can be contained by routine. Emily began to notice subtle changes as days turned into weeks. On some mornings, the dog's ears perked up at the distant sounds of children's laughter. On others, it seemed to watch the silent approach of the morning fog as if expecting something, or someone. The school itself held echoes of past lives. Faded murals on the walls, relics in the dusty library, and the quiet murmur of forgotten voices in empty corridors created an atmosphere where the extraordinary could easily slip into everyday reality. To Emily, the stray dog was both an enigma and a metaphor, a living reminder that truth often hides in plain sight, waiting for someone brave enough to follow it. A personal connection. Emily's own life had been marked by moments of quiet heartbreak and sudden revelations. Years earlier, a secret had shattered her innocence and left her questioning the very foundations of trust. Though she rarely spoke of it, the memory of that loss haunted her, an unhealed wound that time had only dulled rather than erased. Now, as she observed the stray dog each morning, she sensed that this creature might be linked to the echoes of her past. Was it a messenger, a symbol, or perhaps even a key to unlocking the truth she had long tried to forget? That morning, curiosity overcame caution. With a hesitant yet resolute step, Emily followed as the stray dog trotted away from the school. Her footsteps were light on the chilled pavement as she trailed the animal down narrow side streets and past the quiet homes of Silverwood. Every step deepened her sense of anticipation and trepidation. The dog led her to a part of town where memories lingered in the air like a soft refrain. Into the heart of the mystery. The path wound through a forgotten park, its rusted swing sets and overgrown flower beds echoing the quiet sadness of neglected promises. Here, nature and neglect danced in a delicate balance, and the stray dog paused at the entrance of an old, abandoned building. Emily's heart pounded as she approached. The building's weathered facade and broken windows spoke of a once vibrant past now swallowed by time. Inside, shafts of weak light pierced the gloom, illuminating scattered remnants of life, a child's drawing pinned to a wall, a faded photograph tucked into a dusty frame. It was as if the building itself was a repository for the town's lost hopes and forgotten truths. The dog sat by a door, its eyes locked on a spot in the distance. As Emily drew closer, she noticed something that made her breath catch, a scrap of paper, half buried in a pile of debris, its edges softened by age. With trembling fingers, Emily picked it up. The paper bore a fragment of handwriting, hurried and uneven, as though it had been written in a moment of desperation. The words were barely legible, but one phrase stood out, echoing the silent refrain that had haunted her for years: sometimes, the truth is too painful to be left unspoken. Tears blurred her vision. The words stirred a deep, aching sorrow within her, for they resonated with a personal grief she had long tried to bury. Emily realized that the stray dog was not merely a wanderer, it was a guide leading her to confront a truth that she had been avoiding all her life. A whisper of the past. In the days that followed, Emily found herself drawn back to the park and the abandoned building. Every morning, the stray dog would be there, patiently waiting as if to remind her that she could no longer run from the past. The paper, now safely tucked away in her journal, became the focal point of her inner struggle. Each line of the fragile note beckoned her to remember, to face the wounds that had festered in silence. Emily began to piece together fragments of memories, the gentle laughter of a friend lost too soon, the quiet whispers of a scandal that had shattered her family's honor, and the lingering presence of guilt that had haunted her steps ever since. With each recollection, the stray dog's steady, unblinking gaze seemed to urge her on, as if assuring her that the path to healing lay in acknowledging the pain rather than fleeing from it. Late one misty morning, as the town stirred to life under a pale, overcast sky, Emily encountered a figure in the park, a man whose eyes were as weary as her own. He introduced himself as Thomas, a former caretaker of the school who had long since left his post under a cloud of mystery. Thomas revealed that the abandoned building had once been a refuge for those burdened by sorrow, a place where secrets were shared and hearts mended. His voice trembled with both regret and relief as he recounted the building's past, a sanctuary that had been lost to time, much like the promises made under its roof. Thomas's story resonated with Emily. He spoke of a tragic event, a betrayal so deep that it tore families apart and left scars that could not be healed by time alone. The stray dog, he said, had appeared shortly after that fateful day, as though summoned by the collective anguish of those who had suffered. For Thomas, the dog was a silent mourner; for Emily, it became a symbol of the unresolved chapters of her own life. An uncertain future. As the day wore on, the weight of the truth began to settle over Emily like the soft, persistent drizzle that had started to fall. She realized that the stray dog was a living reminder that some secrets must be faced, no matter how painful the journey toward understanding might be. The building, the note, and the recollections that stirred within her all pointed to a single, undeniable truth: in order to move forward, she had to confront the past head-on, even if doing so meant reopening old wounds. Standing beneath the drooping branches of an ancient oak, with the stray dog at her side, Emily vowed that she would not let fear hold her back. Each tear that glistened in her eyes was a testament to the sorrow of lost innocence and the courage required to seek redemption. She took a deep breath, the cool, damp air filling her lungs with both trepidation and hope. In that moment, the stray dog turned and looked back at her as if to say, "Follow me." And so she did, into the murky depths of memory, into the heart of a mystery that had long been shrouded in silence, and into a future where the truth, though painful, would ultimately set her free. The morning faded into a somber afternoon as Emily retraced her steps back to the school. Her mind was awash with questions and emotions too vast for words. Who was behind the note? What was the full story of that tragic day? And most importantly, how would the revelations she was about to uncover reshape the life she had built in Silverwood? As she crossed the threshold of the school, the stray dog lingered a moment longer before vanishing into the distance, a silent promise that the answers lay not in the comfort of routine, but in the brave act of following the unexpected paths that life presents. As twilight descended on Silverwood, Emily found herself consumed by a profound restlessness. The haunting encounter with the stray dog and the revelations shared by Thomas had left her with more questions than answers. Every shadow that danced across the ancient walls of the school seemed to whisper secrets of a past that had long been suppressed, a past that now demanded to be acknowledged. A new alliance. In the weeks following that fateful morning, Emily and Thomas forged a fragile alliance built on shared loss and a mutual need for truth. Thomas, his eyes clouded by memories of a once vibrant community torn apart by betrayal, recounted the tragic events that had shaken Silverwood. He spoke of the day when a hidden secret, too painful to remain concealed, exploded into the open and shattered the fragile bonds of trust. That day, he revealed, was not only a turning point for the town but also the moment when the stray dog first appeared, its quiet presence a somber witness to the unfolding tragedy. Together, they decided that the abandoned building, once a sanctuary for those seeking solace, held the keys to the mystery. With Thomas's old keys in hand and a cautious determination guiding her steps, Emily returned to the desolate structure on a cold, rain-soaked evening. The building's broken corridors and crumbling walls seemed to murmur the memories of lives that had once found refuge within its embrace. Uncovering the relics of memory. Inside, amid the decay, Emily discovered relics that bore silent testimony to lost dreams and unspoken grief. Faded photographs, scattered scraps of paper, and forgotten mementos lay intermingled with remnants of the building's vibrant past. In one neglected room, she found a dusty leather-bound journal. Its pages, filled with an elegant yet hurried script, recounted the inner thoughts of someone who had witnessed the town's darkest hours. One passage struck her deeply. The writer described the sudden appearance of the stray dog, its soulful eyes, its unyielding presence, and hinted that the creature was not merely an animal, but a messenger heralding the return of buried truths. With every word, Emily felt a connection between the journal's sorrowful entries and the personal heartache she had long tried to silence. The journal became both a bridge to the past and a mirror reflecting her own hidden wounds. The weight of unspoken truths. That night, as rain softly tapped against her window, Emily pored over the journal by the dim light of a solitary lamp. Each page revealed fragments of a collective sorrow that resonated with her inner grief. She read of secret meetings held in the very rooms of the abandoned building, a place that had once been a beacon of hope for a community desperate for change. But as the narrative unfolded, it became clear that the promise of redemption had been betrayed. The secret society that had once gathered there had crumbled under the weight of its own deceptions, leaving behind scars that time could never fully heal. In the quiet solitude of her study, Emily felt both the crushing weight of the past and a growing determination. The stray dog, with its unwavering gaze, had already begun to pull her toward a confrontation with memories that she had long avoided. To move forward, she realized, she had to unearth and face the painful truth, no matter how shattering it might be. A dream of unraveling threads. That night, Emily's sleep was invaded by a vivid dream. In her dream, the stray dog appeared, its eyes gleaming with a mysterious light. It led her through a labyrinth of fragmented memories, flashes of joyous laughter abruptly replaced by tears, and moments of quiet tenderness overshadowed by grief. In the dream, the dog's silent urgings became words, urging her to reclaim the stories left in the shadows. When she awoke, tears glistened on her cheeks, and she understood that the path before her was fraught with both peril and the promise of healing. Voices from the past. Determined to follow the pull of those memories, Emily reached out to another keeper of Silverwood's history, Mrs. Abernathy, an elderly resident whose life had been intertwined with the town's triumphs and tragedies. With a fragile, trembling voice, Mrs. Abernathy recounted the day of the catastrophe, a day when secrets spilled into the open and lives were irrevocably changed. In her recollections, the stray dog emerged once again, not as an intruder, but as a silent witness to the heartbreak that had engulfed the community. Mrs. Abernathy's testimony revealed that the abandoned building had once served as the meeting ground for a secret society dedicated to safeguarding the town's hopes. Their sanctuary was a place of whispered promises and shared sorrows. But when the truth was too potent to be hidden any longer, it ignited a chain reaction of betrayal and despair, leaving behind a ledger of names and dates that recorded the downfall of trust. A choice of confrontation. Inspired and heartened by Mrs. Abernathy's recollections, Emily and Thomas set out to piece together the fragmented ledger found in the old school archives. The ledger, its pages yellowed by time, contained entries that hinted at clandestine operations and promises broken. Every name etched in its worn script was a testament to a hidden network that had once held the community together, only to be undone by greed and fear. The ledger confirmed what Emily had long suspected: the tragedy was not merely a series of isolated events but a systemic betrayal that had left the town reeling. In that moment, the stray dog's presence took on a new significance. it was a guardian of truths too painful to remain hidden, a silent advocate urging her to expose the past for the sake of collective healing. On the brink of revelation. Under the cold glow of the moon, as Silverwood lay shrouded in the quiet stillness of night, Emily felt the undeniable pull of destiny. With Thomas by her side, she knew that the next steps in their investigation would force them to confront those who had long guarded the secrets of the town. The deeper they delved, the more apparent it became that the past was a labyrinth of sorrow and resilience, intricately linked to the fate of every resident. Standing at the threshold of the abandoned building once more, Emily felt a surge of determination. The stray dog sat patiently nearby, its eyes reflecting a profound understanding of the human heart's capacity for both pain and redemption. As the first light of dawn began to challenge the darkness, Emily silently vowed to honor the memories of those who had suffered by unveiling the full truth, no matter the cost. As the first rays of dawn stretched over Silverwood, a fragile hope mingled with the chill in the air. Emily, Thomas, and their unexpected ally, Lily, stood together on the precipice of a truth long buried. The ledger's cryptic entries, the whispered confessions in hidden letters, and the steadfast presence of the stray dog had led them here, to the edge of a revelation that promised to shatter old illusions and mend fractured souls. A reckoning in the town hall. Their journey had taken them to the heart of Silverwood's past, the venerable town hall, a building that still bore the weight of unspoken regrets. In a discreet meeting arranged under the pretense of routine civic business, they confronted Mr. Harrington once again. Once a pillar of the community and a former secret society member, Mr. Harrington now appeared as a man caught between remorse and resignation. His eyes, shadowed with memories of choices made in desperate times, betrayed a lingering pain. "It was all done in the name of protection," he murmured, his voice trembling with the weight of his confession. But when the truth began to unravel, the cost was far greater than we ever imagined. His words, laden with sorrow, confirmed what Emily had long suspected: the society's noble intentions had been twisted into a legacy of betrayal, a betrayal that still echoed through the lives of those who had once trusted blindly. Discovering the hidden chamber. Haunted by Mr. Harrington's revelations, Emily returned to the abandoned building that had become the repository of Silverwood's secrets. Determined to uncover every shard of the past, she retraced her steps to a forgotten wing of the structure. There, behind a collapsed wall draped in creeping ivy, she discovered a concealed chamber. Dust motes danced in the slivers of light that penetrated the darkness, revealing a collection of relics that had lain hidden for decades. Inside the chamber, she found more than just old photographs and brittle documents. Tucked away in a rusted metal box were personal diaries and handwritten accounts, raw testimonies from those who had once belonged to the secret society. One diary, in particular, detailed the fateful day when the stray dog had first appeared. According to its pages, the animal had been trained as a guardian of their shared secret, a living symbol of the promise to protect the community at any cost. Each word Emily read deepened the mystery. The diary recounted clandestine meetings, the fervor of youthful idealism, and the eventual collapse of a dream that had sought to unify rather than divide. As she pored over the fragile pages, she felt as though she were conversing with voices from another time, voices that now implored her to set the record straight, even if it meant revisiting the darkest corners of her own past. Confrontations and confessions. In the days that followed, tension mounted between the trio. Thomas, whose own scars from the town's tragedy ran deep, struggled with the burden of his complicity. At times, his resolve wavered under the weight of guilt and regret. "We're all responsible for what's happened," he confessed one somber evening, his gaze lost in the flickering light of a dying candle. "If we don't confront our own mistakes, how can we ever hope to heal?" Lily, though young, carried a quiet wisdom inherited from generations of family lore. Her connection to the secret society's founding ideals was evident in every word she spoke. "My ancestors dreamed of a future where truth would triumph over deceit," she said, her voice soft yet resolute. "But that dream was abandoned when fear took hold. We have a duty, not just to ourselves, but to everyone whose lives were touched by that betrayal, to unearth the truth. Their discussion, held in hushed tones amid the remnants of crumbling plaster and faded memories, marked a turning point. The group realized that the path forward was not simply about collecting relics of the past but confronting the human frailties that had allowed such a secret to persist. It was a reckoning, a moment to lay bare the sins of the past in the hope that acknowledging them might pave the way for forgiveness and renewal. The silent guidance of the stray. Throughout these turbulent revelations, the stray dog remained a silent sentinel. Its steady, unblinking gaze appeared to judge, to guide, and sometimes to comfort. On one particularly cold evening, when the trio's resolve was at its weakest, the dog led them away from the decrepit building and toward the outskirts of town. There, beneath a sky heavy with storm clouds, they encountered a neglected community garden, a place where nature was slowly reclaiming what had once been vibrant and full of life. In that unexpected sanctuary, the dog paused, its eyes reflecting both sorrow and determination. As if inviting them to see beyond the tangible ruins of Silverwood's history, the animal became a living emblem of resilience. Emily felt that in its silent watchfulness lay an unspoken promise, that even in the midst of despair, there was always a path toward redemption. A promise of tomorrow. As dawn broke the following day, painting the sky with tentative strokes of pink and gold, the trio gathered once more in the heart of the town. With the evidence from the hidden chamber and Mr. Harrington's reluctant admissions, the narrative of Silverwood's dark past was beginning to take shape. But they knew that a full reckoning would demand even greater courage. The next step was to confront the remaining keepers of the secret, a task that would force the entire community to face its buried wounds. Emily, Thomas, and Lily made a solemn vow beneath the quiet watch of the stray dog. Their journey was far from over. The truth, though painful, held the promise of liberation. In the convergence of their personal grief and collective history, they saw the possibility of healing, a future where the scars of yesterday might finally give way to the hope of tomorrow. With hearts both heavy and hopeful, they stepped forward into the uncertain light of a new day, ready to unmask the full extent of the betrayal and to reclaim the shattered pieces of Silverwood's legacy. The chill of a winter morning had settled over Silverwood, draping the town in a quiet solemnity that matched the heavy hearts of those seeking truth. As the first pale light crept over the horizon, Emily, Thomas, and Lily convened at their secret meeting spot near an ancient oak in the town square, a silent testament to nature's resilience amidst human sorrow. The stray dog, ever faithful, ambled alongside them, its watchful eyes hinting at secrets it had guarded through countless dawns. A new clue emerges. In the days following their discovery of the hidden chamber and the heartfelt confessions in the old journals, the trio had painstakingly pieced together fragments of the past. Among these relics, one particular inscription had sparked renewed hope, a cryptic verse scrawled in faded ink that read, "Where the river meets the whispering pines, secrets find their rest." The verse hinted at another forgotten place, an estate on the outskirts of Silverwood that once belonged to a family deeply intertwined with the secret society. Rumor had it that within its walls lay a vault, a repository of records that might reveal the full measure of the betrayal and the unhealed wounds of the town. Determined and with hearts steeled by the weight of previous revelations, the trio set off. Their journey took them through frost-laden fields and winding country lanes, every step echoing with both trepidation and the promise of discovery. The forgotten estate. The estate emerged from the mist like a relic of another era, a once grand mansion now surrendered to nature's reclaiming embrace. Ivy clung to crumbling stone walls, and a rusted iron gate, half hidden by wild roses, creaked softly in the cold wind. As they approached, Emily felt an almost palpable presence of history, as if the very air was saturated with long-forgotten memories. Inside, the mansion's interior was a haunting mix of decayed grandeur and lingering whispers of the past. Dust motes danced in the shafts of weak light that penetrated broken windows, and each room bore silent testimony to lives that had once flourished here. In the mansion's basement, tucked behind a battered, rusted door, they discovered an iron-bound vault. Its heavy, time-worn lock seemed to pulse with an aura of inevitability, a final barrier between the present and a past marred by secrets. Thomas, with hands that trembled under the weight of inherited guilt and hope alike, produced an old key passed down through generations. With a reluctant click, the lock yielded, and the vault door swung open to reveal a trove of documents, detailed accounts, photographs, and handwritten letters chronicling the rise and collapse of the secret society. Every page spoke of clandestine meetings, whispered promises, and the deep betrayals that had fractured the town's trust. The weight of revelation. As they carefully sifted through the contents of the vault, a profound silence enveloped the group. Each document was more than ink on paper, it was a shard of truth, a fragment of a larger, sorrowful mosaic. Emily's heart ached with the realization that these records not only chronicled the tragedy of Silverwood but also mirrored her own internal struggles. The stray dog, seated like a silent guardian at the threshold, seemed to affirm that every secret had its time to be unveiled. Lily's soft voice broke the silence, laden with both wonder and grief. Every word here is a plea, a call for forgiveness and justice that was long denied. Her eyes met Thomas's, whose expression was a tumult of remorse and newfound determination. The vault's contents were as much an admission of guilt as they were a roadmap toward redemption. With every new revelation, the intricate web of deceit and betrayal began to unravel, exposing not only the fractures within the secret society but also the deep scars borne by the community. Inner turmoil and the call for justice. The discovery ignited a storm of conflicting emotions. Thomas struggled with the dual burden of personal complicity and the emerging truth that his family's legacy was interwoven with the very betrayal he had sought to escape. "We cannot let the sins of the past remain hidden," he murmured, his voice resonant with both sorrow and resolve. "Only by facing these truths can we hope to mend what has been so deeply broken." Emily, whose resilience had been forged in the fires of loss and hardship, felt a renewed determination. The stray dog's steady gaze reminded her that while the truth could be unbearably painful, it was also the only path to liberation. "These records aren't merely documents," she whispered. "They are voices from the past, urging us to confront and heal the wounds that have long festered in silence." A fateful decision. That evening, gathered in the decaying library of the estate, the trio convened under the flickering light of a solitary candle. Every shadow seemed to dance with the ghosts of Silverwood's history, and every creak of the old floorboards echoed with the regrets of a community burdened by its secrets. In that fragile moment of unity, they made a decision, to bring the long-concealed truths to light, regardless of the personal cost or the upheaval it might cause. They understood that exposing the buried transgressions would shake the very foundation of Silverwood, but only then could true healing begin. As they departed the estate, the stray dog trotted ahead with a purposeful gait, leading them back along the snow-dusted path toward the town. Its silent, unwavering presence was a promise, a reminder that even in the cold grip of winter, there lay a spark of hope, a chance to forge a new beginning from the remnants of the past. Towards a new dawn. The journey back was heavy with a mix of melancholy and hope. The documents they had retrieved promised to expose decades of hidden transgressions, a revelation that would demand accountability from those who had long evaded responsibility. Yet, with every step, Emily's resolve grew stronger. The painful truths that lay ahead were daunting, but the conviction that truth was the precursor to redemption provided a steady light in the darkness. Under the vast, gray expanse of the winter sky, the group pressed onward, their silhouettes merging with the soft twilight. The stray dog, steadfast and unyielding, led them forward into the uncertain crucible of truth, a place where every revelation, however painful, was a step toward reclaiming a future free from the shadows of yesterday. The cold night had given way to a tentative dawn as Silverwood braced itself for the reckoning of long-suppressed truths. With the trove of documents secured from the hidden vault at the forgotten estate, Emily, Thomas, and Lily now faced their most daunting challenge yet, to bring the dark secrets of their town into the light, and in doing so, force a community to confront its own painful legacy. A call to the community. In the grand, echoing hall of the old school, now serving as the meeting place for an emergency assembly, the people of Silverwood gathered with heavy hearts and wary eyes. Whispers of distrust and anxious murmurs filled the air as the townspeople took their seats beneath the faded portraits of ancestors whose eyes now seemed to demand accountability. Emily stepped up to the makeshift podium, the weight of every hidden sorrow pressing upon her. Clutching the documents that had unraveled decades of betrayal, she took a steadying breath. Today, she began, her voice both tremulous and resolute, we can no longer allow the shadows of the past to dictate our future. The truth, however painful, is the only path to healing. A hush fell over the room, broken only by the soft, persistent ticking of an ancient clock, a reminder that time, relentless and impartial, had finally caught up with those who sought to bury the truth. Confrontations in the hall. From the back of the room, Mr. Harrington, a man whose dignified exterior had long masked a soul burdened by guilt, rose slowly. His eyes, once filled with an unyielding pride, now shimmered with regret. I was part of a network that believed we were protecting this community, he confessed, his voice barely rising above a whisper. But in our misguided attempts, we sowed seeds of betrayal that have taken root in the hearts of many. His admission sent ripples through the assembly. Faces etched with sorrow, anger, and disbelief turned toward him as the stark reality of decades-old deceptions came into sharp focus. The evidence was undeniable, detailed ledgers, personal diaries, and faded photographs that chronicled clandestine meetings, broken promises, and the heartbreaking disintegration of trust. In that charged atmosphere, the stray dog, ever the silent witness, sat at the threshold of the hall. Its steady, unblinking gaze seemed to remind everyone present that even amidst the deepest wounds, there could be a spark of redemption. The avalanche of revelations. One by one, members of the community began to share their own recollections. Old Mrs. Abernathy, her voice quavering with both pain and determination, recounted the day the secret society's noble ideals were twisted into instruments of deceit. We were promised unity and protection, she said, but instead, we were left to pick up the shattered pieces of trust. Her words resonated deeply with those who had silently borne the weight of unspoken grief for far too long. As the flood of memories and testimonies swelled, the documents that Emily had so painstakingly gathered became not just evidence, but a mirror reflecting the collective agony of Silverwood. Each line of faded ink, every hastily scrawled note, told a story of betrayal, a story that demanded both justice and forgiveness. A turning point toward healing. In the midst of the emotional tumult, a fragile hope began to emerge. Thomas, whose internal struggle had been as tumultuous as the revelations themselves, addressed the gathering. We cannot change what has been done, he declared, his voice gaining strength with each word. But we can choose to acknowledge our past and work together to heal. Only by facing these truths can we rebuild the trust that has been so deeply broken. Lily, ever the quiet beacon of resolve, added, our ancestors believed in a future where truth would triumph over deceit. Let us honor their vision by ensuring that no secret remains buried, and no voice silenced. Her words, tender yet firm, touched the hearts of many, weaving a shared commitment to mend the fractures of the past. The road to redemption. As the assembly drew to a close, the atmosphere in the hall had transformed from one of resigned sorrow to cautious optimism. The road ahead would be arduous, paved with hard confessions, legal reckonings, and the slow, painful process of communal healing. Yet for the first time in decades, Silverwood citizens felt the stirring of a collective resolve, a determination to reclaim their future by facing their history head-on. Emily, Thomas, and Lily stepped out into the chill night air, the stray dog padding silently beside them. Under the vast, star-studded sky, they shared a moment of quiet solidarity. They knew that the unmasking of the past was only the beginning of a long journey toward redemption. With every step forward, they carried the hope that truth, once unleashed, could pave the way for forgiveness and a renewed sense of unity. The path ahead was uncertain and fraught with the potential for further heartache. But as the first light of a new day began to break over Silverwood, it also cast away the lingering darkness, promising that even the deepest wounds could, in time, give way to healing. The morning after the fateful assembly, Silverwood awoke to a landscape forever altered by revelations. The bitter chill of winter had given way to a hesitant thaw, as if the town itself were exhaling after years of tightly held secrets. In the quiet hours before dawn, Emily, Thomas, and Lily gathered in the modest warmth of Emily's study, a small room lined with books, faded photographs, and the persistent echo of memories. The stray dog, ever watchful, lay at their feet, its gaze steady in knowing as if guarding the fragile promise of a new beginning. The morning after, reflections and resolve. In the soft light of early morning, each member of the trio wrestled with the weight of their newfound burden. The documents extracted from the vault, the testimonies laid bare in the school hall, and the somber confessions of Mr. Harrington had upended the lives of Silverwood's residents. For Emily, the revelations were deeply personal, a stark confrontation with the ghosts of her past and the painful truths that had long haunted her dreams. With trembling fingers, she reread a passage from one of the recovered journals. The truth is a double-edged sword, it wounds and heals in equal measure. This bittersweet mantra resonated in her heart, fueling a determination to see the process through, no matter the cost. Thomas, too, felt the burden of collective guilt. His eyes, haunted by years of silence and regret, now shone with a cautious hope. "We've taken the first step," he murmured, "but the path ahead is fraught with more revelations than we can imagine." His voice carried the weight of a man who had long carried the secrets of his family, now ready to confront them in the open light of day. Lily, whose quiet wisdom belied her youth, offered a gentle smile. "Every truth we uncover is a brick laid in the foundation of a healed community," she said. With a maturity far beyond her years, she became the beacon that would help guide them through the darkness. The investigation deepens. Determined to leave no stone unturned, the trio began to scrutinize the documents with renewed vigor. They pored over ledgers that recorded clandestine transactions and secret meetings, deciphered faded handwriting that recounted promises and betrayals, and pieced together a timeline that stretched back decades. Each document was a window into a past that had been meticulously hidden, and each detail a piece of the puzzle that explained the deep fissures now plaguing Silverwood. Their investigation soon attracted the attention of other townsfolk. An unexpected informant emerged from the fringes of the community, a quiet, unassuming man named Arthur, whose weathered face and hesitant eyes betrayed a lifetime spent on the margins. Arthur claimed to have been a silent observer during the secret society's heyday. One rainy afternoon, as droplets traced the lines of his worn hat, he approached Emily outside the town library. "I've kept my head down all these years," Arthur confided in a low voice, "but the burden of what I witnessed has grown too heavy to bear in silence." He revealed details that filled gaps in the ledger, secret meetings held in hidden rooms, whispered alliances between families once thought to be beyond reproach, and the painful realization that the betrayal was not an isolated incident but part of a broader, more systematic manipulation of trust. His revelations added layers to the mystery and provided the group with fresh leads to follow. The stray dog's trail. Even as human voices recounted their memories, the stray dog continued to play its silent part. One foggy evening, as the sun dipped below a horizon streaked with bruised purples and grays, the animal led the group on a quiet expedition along a forgotten footpath that skirted the edge of town. The path, overgrown and rarely trodden, meandered alongside the gently murmuring river, a river that, according to one of the cryptic verses in the old inscription, was where the river meets the whispering pines. Following the dog's unerring steps, the group found themselves before a thicket of ancient pines. Hidden among their gnarled roots was a small, weathered metal box, partially concealed by moss and fallen leaves. Inside the box lay a set of letters, bound with a fraying ribbon, and a faded photograph of a smiling family, their identities obscured by time. The letters were written in an elegant cursive, recounting moments of hope, secret alliances, and ultimately, the bitter taste of betrayal. It was as if the stray dog had been entrusted with the final pieces of a long-forgotten tale, now delivered to those courageous enough to listen. Personal reckonings and new alliances. As the group continued to gather evidence, personal reckonings intertwined with the broader investigation. Emily found herself haunted by memories of her own youthful innocence, the days before the weight of unspoken truths had dimmed the light of her smile. Late into the night, as the wind whispered against her window, she would revisit the early days of her teaching career, the vibrant laughter of children in her classroom, and the inexplicable sadness that sometimes gripped her heart. In these solitary moments, she understood that the journey toward truth was not only a mission to heal the community but also a path toward redeeming her own fractured soul. Thomas, burdened by the legacy of his family's involvement, began reaching out to distant relatives and old acquaintances. He discovered that many had carried silent guilt and regret, their lives irrevocably altered by secrets kept in the shadows. In a series of tense yet cathartic meetings held in hushed corners of local diners and quiet park benches, Thomas and Arthur gathered testimonies that painted a broader picture of the society's influence, a picture that stretched beyond Silverwood to touch lives in unexpected ways. Meanwhile, Lily used her innate empathy to bridge the gap between generations. In conversations with elderly residents, she listened to stories of love, betrayal, and hope that had been passed down through whispered family lore. These recollections, often filled with both sorrow and resilience, provided the group with new perspectives and a renewed sense of purpose. Together, they began to see that the betrayal was not the end of the story, but rather a wound that, if tended with honesty and compassion, could eventually give way to healing. Unraveling a greater conspiracy. The more they uncovered, the more it became evident that the secret society's machinations were not confined to petty grievances and local rivalries. Instead, a deeper conspiracy had taken root, a network of influence that had manipulated events for the benefit of a select few while leaving the rest of the community to suffer in silence. The documents revealed that some members had amassed power and wealth, using the society as a facade to conduct illicit deals and silence dissent. These revelations sent shockwaves through the group, as they realized that the struggle for truth was entwined with the pursuit of justice on a scale far larger than they had ever imagined. In heated discussions that stretched into the early hours of the morning, the trio debated their next steps. The prospect of exposing a conspiracy of this magnitude was both exhilarating and terrifying. They knew that their actions could incite fierce opposition from those who had long wielded power from the shadows. Yet, the alternative, allowing the dark forces of the past to continue manipulating the present, was a burden they could no longer bear. Embracing the future with unyielding courage. In a moment of quiet determination beneath a sky dusted with the first hints of spring, the group made a pact. They vowed to compile their findings into a comprehensive account of the society's deeds, a document that would be shared not only with the town's leaders but with every resident of Silverwood. Their plan was to hold a public forum, a final reckoning where every secret would be laid bare, and every voice would have the chance to speak its truth. The preparation for this public confrontation was arduous. Late nights were spent organizing documents, verifying testimonies, and rehearsing the narratives that would soon challenge entrenched power structures. Emily found solace in the act of writing. Each word became a declaration of independence from the tyranny of silence. Thomas and Lily, ever supportive, ensured that no detail was overlooked, their collaboration a testament to the strength of community when united by a common cause. As the day of the forum approached, Silverwood itself began to stir with an undercurrent of anticipation. Rumors spread through the streets like wildfire, whispers of past injustices, hints of hidden alliances, and the promise of a reckoning that would finally free the town from its lingering shadows. In every hushed conversation at local cafes and on park benches, there was an unmistakable sense that something monumental was about to unfold. The stray dog's final guidance. On the morning of the forum, as the town hall filled with a crowd both anxious and hopeful, the stray dog appeared once more at the entrance. Its presence was a silent benediction, a symbol of the enduring spirit that had watched over Silverwood through every trial and triumph. As Emily took the stage, the dog's steady gaze met hers, a reminder that truth, like the faithful animal, had been with them every step of the way. With her voice clear and unwavering, Emily began to recount the journey that had brought them to this moment. She spoke of hidden vaults and secret letters, of whispered memories and long-buried wounds, and of the collective resolve that had transformed personal grief into a mission for justice. Her words, imbued with both sorrow and hope, resonated deeply with the assembled crowd. Each testimony, every document unveiled, and all the sacrifices made along the way were woven together into a tapestry of redemption, a story of a community ready to reclaim its future. A new dawn for Silverwood. As the forum reached its climax, old grievances were aired and long-held secrets laid before all. There were moments of bitter confrontation, tears shed in public, and voices raised in both anger and relief. Yet, amid the tumult, a palpable shift occurred, a sense that the healing process had truly begun. Even those who had been complicit in the past could no longer escape the call to atonement, and the promise of a fresh start glimmered on the horizon. In the days and weeks that followed the forum, Silverwood began to transform. New committees were formed to oversee transparency in local governance. Community gatherings became opportunities for shared healing, where stories of loss were balanced by dreams of renewal. The stray dog, which had silently borne witness to so much sorrow, continued its daily vigil at the school entrance, a living reminder that even the most painful truths could give way to hope when faced with unyielding courage. Emily, Thomas, and Lily emerged not as heroes unscathed by the past, but as kindred spirits forged in the crucible of truth. Their journey, though far from over, had lit a beacon for an entire town, a beacon that promised that, in embracing the wounds of yesterday, Silverwood could finally step into the light of a new dawn. A community on the brink. In the weeks following the town hall forum, Silverwood appeared to be slowly healing. New committees had been formed, and many residents felt that the long-held wounds were finally being attended to. Yet beneath the tentative progress lay an undercurrent of disquiet. In hushed conversations over coffee in the local diner and during quiet walks along snow-dusted streets, people whispered of unanswered questions and hints of further deceit. The truth that had been unveiled at the forum was only part of a larger, darker tapestry, a tapestry that now threatened to unravel once more. Whispers of a new threat. One cool, overcast morning, as Emily sorted through her growing collection of documents and recollections, she discovered an envelope tucked between the pages of an old ledger. Its handwriting was unfamiliar and deliberately discreet. Inside, a single typed letter read, "The truth you hold is only half the story. Look where the past meets the present, and you will find what has been hidden, and what remains in power." The message was cryptic yet urgent, hinting that the secret society's machinations extended far beyond the borders of Silverwood. A chill ran down Emily's spine as she realized that forces with even greater influence might be at work, determined to keep their grip on power. A reunion of the past. Days later, while reviewing a series of dated photographs from the estate's vault, Thomas received an unexpected visitor at his modest home. A man in a worn overcoat and with a deep, cautious gaze introduced himself as Samuel, an old acquaintance whose family had once been intertwined with the secret society. Samuel's presence stirred memories of whispered secrets and unspoken alliances. He revealed that he had long carried a heavy burden, knowledge of a faction within the society that had not only manipulated local events but had also established connections with influential figures beyond Silverwood. Samuel's arrival was both a warning and an invitation to dig deeper into a past that many had hoped would remain buried. The stray dog's vigil. Throughout these unsettling developments, the stray dog maintained its silent vigil. One fog-laden evening, as dusk merged with the encroaching darkness, the animal began to stray from its usual path. With deliberate steps, it led Emily, Thomas, Lily, and even Samuel, who had now joined their cautious circle, along a narrow, overgrown trail that wound its way to the town cemetery. There, hidden behind ancient tombstones and the creeping ivy of forgotten memorials, they discovered a small, rusted shed. Its door, nearly camouflaged by age and neglect, creaked open to reveal a trove of items that had long escaped the light of day. Unraveling new clues. Inside the dim confines of the shed, the group uncovered a cache of documents, bundles of letters, faded photographs, and a series of meticulously kept diaries. These records, written in a mix of hurried cursive and formal script, detailed meetings, covert transactions, and alliances that spanned several decades, and hinted at connections reaching well beyond Silverwood. One diary, in particular, recounted secret gatherings in distant cities, implicating figures in regional politics and business. The evidence suggested that the secret society's influence had not waned with time but had morphed into a more insidious network, quietly pulling strings from behind the scenes. The realization struck them hard: the battle for truth was far from over. A fractured trust. As word of the new evidence began to seep into the community, divisions emerged. Some residents, fearful of the repercussions, dismissed the revelations as the ramblings of a few bitter souls. Others, emboldened by the earlier forum, demanded further accountability. Heated debates broke out at town meetings and in the once tranquil corridors of the local school. Old loyalties were questioned and fresh resentments festered. The unity that had begun to form in the aftermath of the initial disclosures now faced the strain of a truth that was more complex and more dangerous than anyone had anticipated. Courage in the face of darkness. Despite the growing tension, Emily, Thomas, Lily, and Samuel resolved to continue their quest. They understood that revealing the full extent of the conspiracy would not only force those responsible to answer for their past actions but might also endanger lives. Still, the prospect of cowering before a hidden enemy was far more terrifying than the risk of confrontation. In secret meetings held in the back rooms of local cafes and during late-night strolls through deserted streets, they plotted their next move. Their objective was clear: compile every shred of evidence into a definitive account, one that would leave no room for denial, and to prepare for the inevitable backlash from those who had prospered in the shadows. A beacon of hope amidst uncertainty. In the midst of growing uncertainty, the stray dog continued to serve as an unspoken guide. Its calm, unwavering presence seemed to impart a silent promise that no matter how deep the darkness, there was always a spark of hope waiting to be kindled. As the group pored over the newfound documents late into the night, they began to see a pattern emerging, a network of corruption that, while vast and complex, was not invincible. The emerging narrative painted a picture of a community ready to stand up against a long-standing tyranny. Every document, every faded photograph, and every whispered memory became a building block for a future where transparency and justice could prevail. The road ahead. The weight of the new evidence was both exhilarating and daunting. The group knew that exposing this expanded conspiracy would be a formidable challenge. The stakes were higher than ever before. Powerful forces lurked behind the curtain, intent on keeping their secrets intact. Yet, the resolve that had carried them through the initial revelations now steeled them for what lay ahead. Plans were set in motion for another public assembly, one that would not only revisit the past but also address the continuing influence of those hidden in power. The decision was unanimous: the people of Silverwood deserved to know the full truth, even if it meant enduring further pain before healing could truly begin. A glimmer of unity. In the cold light of a winter morning, as the town slowly stirred to life, a sense of collective determination began to crystallize. Neighbors who had once been estranged by fear and mistrust started to bridge the divides. Community leaders, local journalists, and even some of the very figures implicated in past deceptions expressed a cautious willingness to confront the lingering darkness. The stray dog, as if in silent approval, trotted along the freshly cleared streets, its eyes reflecting the resolve of a community on the cusp of transformative change. As the first rays of sunlight broke through the lingering fog, Emily stood before her gathered friends and allies, documents clutched in her hand and a firm resolve in her heart. "Our journey is not yet complete," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor of uncertainty. The shadows may be long and deep, but together we have the power to bring them into the light. Let us honor those who suffered in silence by ensuring that no secret remains forever hidden. A tension that cuts like ice. In the weeks following the public forum, the atmosphere in Silverwood had grown palpably charged. Though many residents embraced the newfound clarity and healing, dark undercurrents stirred among the powerful. Whispers in shadowed hallways and furtive glances exchanged between influential figures spoke of a determination to protect secrets at all costs. The revelation of documents and confessions had not only unmasked local betrayals but had also exposed a broader network of manipulation, one that reached into the higher echelons of power. For Emily, Thomas, Lily, and Samuel, the struggle was evolving from a quest for communal healing into a battle against forces that would stop at nothing to silence the truth. An ominous warning. One overcast afternoon, as rain traced icy paths down foggy windows, Emily found herself alone in the quiet of her study. The room, cluttered with piles of evidence and mementos of the past, seemed to hum with a nervous energy. Amid her notes, a plain envelope, unmarked and delivered by no one, appeared on her desk. Opening it, she discovered a typed note that sent a shiver down her spine. You have stirred a sleeping giant. The shadows you chase are not willing to remain in darkness. Cease your search, or face the consequences. The message was unequivocal, a stark reminder that the web of conspiracy extended further than they had dared imagine, and that powerful adversaries were now watching their every move. Gathering in the eye of the storm. That evening, beneath a sky swollen with impending rain, the group convened at their usual secret meeting spot, a derelict boathouse on the edge of town that had once been a refuge for whispered confidences. The interior, illuminated by a single flickering lantern, became a crucible for their mounting fears and steely determination. Thomas broke the silence, his voice rough with resolve. We knew the road would be dangerous, but this is beyond what we expected. We're being warned to stop, but if we bow to fear, everything we've uncovered will be for nothing. Lily's eyes shone with quiet intensity as she added, the truth has always been our beacon. Even if the storm comes, we must stand together. Our evidence is irrefutable, and the people deserve to know every secret that has poisoned our community. Samuel, who had spent years silently burdened by his own past complicity, leaned forward. They're not just remnants of an old society, they are a network with influence far beyond Silverwood. We need to prepare ourselves, both for public scrutiny and for any backlash they might unleash. The enemy reveals itself. As if on cue, word arrived that the town council had summoned an emergency session. Rumor had it that a faction of high-ranking officials, threatened by the rapid unraveling of their clandestine alliances, intended to counteract the momentum of the truth movement. The group agreed that attending this session could offer a chance to confront their adversaries directly, but also recognize the grave risks involved. Under a slate-gray sky, the meeting took place in the austere council chamber at the town hall. Heavy, dark drapes blocked out much of the waning daylight, and the room was filled with murmurs of apprehension. At the head of the long wooden table sat Councilman Robert Whitmore, a man whose public mask of respectability now concealed a steely determination to preserve old power. Whitmore's opening remarks, delivered in a controlled yet chilling tone, warned the assembled citizens. Our town stands at a crossroads. There are forces at work, forces that, if left unchecked, will plunge Silverwood into chaos. We must take decisive measures to protect our community, even if it means making hard choices. Emily, seated among a growing contingent of supporters, including local journalists and community leaders, felt her heart thud in her chest. She exchanged a determined glance with Thomas and Lily. It was clear that Whitmore's words were designed to instill fear and justify sweeping measures against those daring to question the established order. The confrontation unfolds. When the session opened to questions, a heated debate ensued. An elder resident, his voice trembling with pent-up emotion, demanded clarity. How can we heal when our past is obscured by lies? We deserve transparency. In response, Whitmore's calm veneer cracked just enough to reveal his underlying threat. Some truths are dangerous when unleashed without control. Unfettered revelations can shatter the very fabric of our society. At that moment, Samuel rose from his seat, his tone measured but unwavering. We have gathered undeniable evidence of manipulation and betrayal. To hide behind the guise of protection is to condone injustice. We call on this council to honor the people's right to know, regardless of the discomfort it may bring. The room fell into a tense silence, broken only by the persistent patter of rain on the high windows. In that charged moment, it became clear that the council was on the defensive, its carefully constructed narrative beginning to crumble under the weight of collective resolve. A show of unity. Outside the council chamber, a small group of residents had gathered, emboldened by the courage of those who dared speak out. Banners calling for justice and transparency were held high, and the stray dog, ever the silent emblem of perseverance, paced along the steps as if keeping watch over the proceedings. The energy of the crowd was palpable, a reminder that Silverwood's soul was too resilient to be stifled by fear. Back inside, as the council session dragged on with bitter exchanges and evasive answers, Emily felt a surge of conviction. She knew that the battle was not merely against individuals but against an entrenched system that thrived on secrecy. Her voice, steady despite the tumult, rang out. Let us remember that every life in this town is built on the foundation of trust. When that trust is violated, it is not the innocent who suffer, but the entire community. We must not allow our future to be dictated by those who hide behind silence. Her words, resonant and impassioned, were met with a fervent murmur of agreement from the assembly. Even among the council, a few faces betrayed hesitation, a sign that the tide of truth was beginning to turn. The calm before the next storm. In the aftermath of the confrontation, as dusk gave way to a deep, indigo night, the group reconvened in their boathouse hideout. The air was thick with both relief and apprehension. They knew that the council's defiant stance was only a precursor to the storm that lay ahead, a storm that could bring both ruin and the promise of radical change. Emily sat by the small, rain-spattered window, her thoughts a mixture of exhaustion and steely resolve. Thomas meticulously reviewed the newly acquired transcripts and notes from the council meeting, while Lily compiled testimonies from residents who had braved the night to speak their truth. Samuel, ever the quiet guardian of shared burdens, prepared to reach out to other allies beyond Silverwood, individuals whose expertise might be crucial in confronting the wider network of corruption. The stray dog lay quietly at their feet, its presence a constant reminder that even in the darkest of nights, loyalty and hope persisted. It was as though the creature had become the personification of their collective spirit, a symbol that, no matter how fierce the storm, the truth would endure. Looking toward an uncertain dawn. As the group dispersed for the night, each member carried with them the weight of the day's revelations and the daunting promise of what lay ahead. The struggle for Silverwood's soul had entered a critical phase, a phase where every secret uncovered, every act of courage, could tilt the balance between repression and redemption. In the silent hours before dawn, with the rain finally easing and the first soft hues of morning light beginning to edge the sky, Emily allowed herself a single, hopeful thought, that through this storm of reckoning, they might not only reclaim the truth but also forge a future where every resident of Silverwood could finally breathe free. The gathering storm. In the days following the turbulent council session, an almost tangible tension gripped Silverwood. The air seemed charged with electricity, a prelude to a storm that had been long in the making. The revelations of past betrayals and the unveiling of clandestine networks had shaken every resident to their core. Yet, as the winds of change began to howl, the community found itself at a crossroads. Fear warred with hope in hushed conversations across dimly lit streets and quiet corners of neighborhood cafes. Amid this tumult, Emily, Thomas, Lily, and Samuel gathered in a secret location once more, a refurbished community center on the outskirts of town that had been transformed into a haven for truth-seekers. Inside the center's broad, high-ceilinged room, maps and documents were spread across large oak tables. Every scrap of paper, every faded photograph, and every handwritten note told a part of the story that had been suppressed for decades. The stray dog, now a near-mythical symbol of the town's resilience, lounged near the window, its eyes following the swirling snow outside as if in silent vigil. In that moment, the group recognized that their struggle was no longer just about exposing corruption, it was about reclaiming their home, restoring trust, and mending hearts that had long been fractured by secrecy and deceit. Into the heart of the conspiracy. Over countless hours of painstaking research, the group had unearthed evidence that stretched far beyond the boundaries of Silverwood. The secret society, once thought to be a local anomaly, had evolved into a far-reaching network influencing regional politics, commerce, and even law enforcement. The documents revealed covert meetings held in lavish mansions and secret enclaves, where powerful figures negotiated deals that enriched a select few at the expense of the many. A newly discovered dossier, secured from an underground safe in an abandoned bank vault, detailed transactions that linked local officials to influential business magnates in neighboring cities. The ledger entries were damning: names, dates, sums of money exchanged under the table, and even cryptic references to protection fees. As Emily traced her trembling finger over the printed names and signatures, a cold shiver ran down her spine. Every detail confirmed that the betrayal had been orchestrated with the cold precision of those who cared not for the pain they inflicted. Thomas, whose personal history was now inextricably intertwined with the revelations, spoke in a low, determined tone. "This isn't just about one town's sins, it's a blueprint for how power corrupts absolutely. We have to show the world that no one, no matter how influential, is above accountability." Lily, ever the heart of the movement, added, "Our ancestors dreamed of a future where truth would prevail. Today, we honor that legacy by ensuring that every piece of evidence, every testimony, is given the light it deserves." Samuel, whose quiet strength had bolstered the group through their darkest moments, nodded in agreement. He had reached out to former colleagues and trusted confidants from distant towns, slowly weaving together a network of support that transcended Silverwood's borders. The last assembly. The moment of reckoning finally arrived on a frigid winter morning when the town hall, an edifice that had once symbolized both authority and hidden tyranny, was filled to capacity. Citizens from every corner of Silverwood, along with curious onlookers from neighboring communities, gathered in the grand chamber. The long wooden benches, polished by decades of tradition, now bore the weight of collective anticipation. At the podium stood Emily, her eyes scanning the expectant crowd. Every face reflected pain, hope, and an unwavering desire for truth. The stray dog, its presence almost ceremonial, sat quietly at the foot of the stage, a living reminder of the silent strength that had guided them thus far. With measured resolve, Emily began. "Today, we stand not as victims of a corrupt past, but as architects of a new future. For too long, the truth has been smothered by fear and deceit. Now, armed with evidence and united in purpose, we shall lay bare the full extent of the betrayal that has haunted our community." One by one, members of the group stepped forward. Thomas presented the damning ledger entries and photographs that traced the insidious web of corruption. Lily recounted moving testimonies from longtime residents, stories of loss, betrayal, and the resilience of a people who refused to be broken. Samuel detailed the expansive network that linked Silverwood's elites to far-off power brokers. The presentation was meticulous, each piece of evidence interwoven into a narrative that left no room for denial. The audience was rapt. Murmurs of shock and sorrow rippled through the hall as the assembled citizens absorbed the magnitude of the revelations. The damning evidence cut through decades of obfuscation like a scalpel through old wounds. For many, the presentation was cathartic, a long-overdue reckoning that vindicated years of silent suffering. Unmasking the mastermind. As the final pieces of evidence were laid out, all eyes turned to the figure who had, until now, remained shrouded in mystery, the mastermind behind the network of corruption. For months, rumors had circulated about a shadowy figure known only as the Chancellor, a moniker whispered in secret meetings and coded messages. This enigmatic figure was said to have orchestrated the betrayal from behind a veneer of respectability, manipulating events with the precision of a seasoned puppeteer. In a stunning climax to the assembly, an independent investigative journalist, who had worked covertly with the group, stepped forward with a dossier bearing irrefutable proof of the Chancellor's identity. Photographs, intercepted communications, and financial records converged to reveal the true face behind the myth. The Chancellor was none other than Councilman Robert Whitmore himself, a man whose calm public demeanor now crumbled under the weight of incontrovertible evidence. Gasps echoed throughout the hall as Whitmore's expression shifted from indignation to panic. His once steady hands trembled as he attempted to mount a defense, but the torrent of facts rendered his rebuttals feeble. Emily's voice rang out clearly. The Chancellor, once a guardian of our town's legacy, has betrayed the trust of every citizen of Silverwood. Your reign of deception ends now. The confrontation was electric, a culmination of years of suppressed truths and unspoken grief. For many in the audience, it was a moment of vindication; for others, it was the painful acknowledgement that those they had once revered were capable of unspeakable betrayal. The fall of the old guard. In the days that followed the public assembly, the repercussions were swift and far-reaching. Law enforcement, now armed with overwhelming evidence, launched an inquiry into the illicit dealings that had fatally undermined the town's integrity. Arrest warrants were issued, and several high-ranking officials, including Whitmore, were taken into custody. The shockwaves of these events rippled beyond Silverwood's borders, prompting similar investigations in neighboring communities where the dark tendrils of the conspiracy had also taken root. For Emily and her companions, the victory was bittersweet. The fall of the old guard did not erase the years of pain, the broken trust, or the lives that had been irreparably damaged by the systemic corruption. Yet, in the aftermath of the chaos, there was a palpable sense of liberation, a collective exhale as the town began the arduous process of healing. In a series of community forums that followed, citizens openly discussed their visions for a transparent, accountable future. Committees were formed to oversee the reconstruction of local governance, and new protocols were established to ensure that the dark chapters of the past would never be allowed to repeat themselves. The evidence had not only unmasked those who had exploited the town's vulnerabilities but had also united a community that had long been divided by fear and mistrust. A community reborn. As winter slowly yielded to the tentative warmth of early spring, Silverwood embarked on a journey of renewal. The scars of betrayal were still visible, etched into the weathered faces of its residents and the faded murals on the school's walls, but they were now interlaced with symbols of resilience and hope. The stray dog, whose silent vigil had spanned the darkest hours, remained a beloved emblem of steadfast loyalty. Its gentle eyes seemed to convey a silent promise, that even in the wake of profound sorrow, life would endure, and from the ruins, a brighter future would emerge. Emily, once burdened by the weight of her own secret grief, found solace in her role as both teacher and truth-bearer. In her classroom, she began to share not only lessons from textbooks but also the story of Silverwood's journey, a narrative of human frailty, courage, and the transformative power of confronting the truth. Her students, inspired by the resilience of their community, grew into adults who carried forward the lessons of accountability and empathy. Thomas dedicated himself to restoring the town's historical archives, ensuring that the full record of both triumph and tragedy would be preserved for future generations. He organized public lectures and storytelling events where survivors could recount their experiences, turning the act of remembrance into a catalyst for healing. Lily, whose empathy had bridged the divide between generations, became an advocate for community outreach, working tirelessly to create programs that addressed the social wounds left by decades of secrecy. In town meetings, under the gentle canopy of rejuvenated trees and amidst newly painted murals that celebrated unity, citizens spoke of the past not with bitterness alone but with a hopeful resolve to forge a better future. New initiatives blossomed, transparent governance, community gardens, and cultural festivals that celebrated the rich tapestry of Silverwood's history. The very air of the town seemed to vibrate with a renewed sense of purpose, as if each resident had become an active guardian of the truth. Epilogue: The Stray Dog's Legacy. Years passed, and the wounds of yesterday slowly transformed into the wisdom of experience. Silverwood had become a symbol of rebirth, a town that had confronted its darkest secrets and emerged stronger for it. At the heart of this transformation was the quiet legacy of the stray dog, whose journey from a silent sentinel at the school's entrance to a revered icon of resilience paralleled the town's own metamorphosis. Every morning, as the first light of dawn bathed the rebuilt school and the newly restored town square in gentle gold, the stray dog could be seen padding along its familiar route. Children, now grown into adults who carried forward the legacy of truth and courage, would pause in their daily routines to offer a gentle pat or a kind word to the creature that had silently witnessed their collective evolution. In local lore, the stray dog was celebrated not merely as an animal but as a guardian spirit, an enduring reminder that the truth, however painful, is the seed from which healing grows. At a commemorative ceremony held on the anniversary of the final assembly, Emily addressed the crowd with quiet dignity. "We have learned that every secret, no matter how deeply buried, has the power to bind us together or tear us apart. Today, we stand united, not defined by the betrayals of the past, but by the courage to embrace our truth and build a future grounded in transparency, compassion, and hope." Her words were met with applause that resonated through the crisp spring air, a celebration of survival and renewal. The final pages of Silverwood's history, once stained by deception and loss, were being rewritten in bold, hopeful strokes. The documents that had once chronicled corruption now served as lessons in vigilance and the importance of community oversight. The painful legacy of the secret society was transformed into a testament to the power of collective action, a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming darkness, a steadfast commitment to truth could spark the light of redemption. In the quiet moments that followed the ceremony, as the sun dipped low over the horizon and cast long, forgiving shadows over the town, the stray dog sat contentedly at the steps of the school. Its watchful eyes, reflecting the memory of countless dawns and dusks, spoke of a future where every heart was free to embrace both the pain of the past and the promise of tomorrow. And so, as Silverwood stepped into a new era, one defined by open dialogue, unyielding accountability, and the everlasting belief in the possibility of rebirth, the legacy of the stray dog endured. It remained a silent guardian of a community that had learned that truth, no matter how painful, was the most potent force for change of all.